nefarious nightmare contains themes that may be explicit or triggering for some. Specific warnings and disclaimers will be mentioned in the show notes. A nefarious nightmare assumes all parties that are mentioned in these cases to be innocent unless proven guilty in a court of law. Listener discretion is strongly advised. You can help us grow the show by leaving us a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or you can join our Patreon for lighthearted bonus content. With this, welcome to Season 5.
Always remember, you are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, smarter than you think, and twice as beautiful as you'd ever imagine.
Rumi.
Grace woke you up this morning, Grace started you on your way, and Grace enabled you to survive until this very moment.
Charles E. Blake.
We continue phase 3 with Sarah's story. Now, Sarah's family entrusted a man with the task of babysitting her, only to find out that he had sinister, ulterior motives. What he did to Sarah was deeply disturbing, and every parent's worst nightmare, as well as a classic kidnapping story we all heard of as children about a child gone missing, which, thankfully in this case, the girl had survived. We talked to Sarah about how she's been since the day that this incident occurred, how it impacts her choices to this day, and we commend her for her bravery to finally tell her story. With that, I'm Courtney Fenner.
And I'm Amanda Cronin, and A Nefarious Nightmare presents Still Minding the Beehive, Surviving Sex Crimes, Part 10.
If you're listening to this episode the moment it drops and you haven't purchased your tickets to True Crime and Paranormal Podcast Festival, it means you have just, 3 days? Some days until the festival starts. Y'all better get on that. Head on over to truecrimepodcastfestival.com, navigate over to tickets, and at checkout put BEES, that's BEES, to get a discount on your tickets. Otherwise, wish us luck, y'all, and we hope to see you there.
I agree with that. Since we don't have much in the way of housekeeping, let's get right into it. In Season 3, Episode 5, we did an episode called Lured Away, about Alaska Burns, formerly Haley Burns. Alaska was coerced by a friend she had made online into a relationship of sorts, and was missing for over a year. Her mother, Shauna Burns, was finally able to tell the entire story. You may have heard this story from our podcast, or you're familiar with it because it was on Dr. Phil. When speaking with Shauna, the kidnapping isn't immediately apparent, because when you visit her TikTok, you'll remember she went viral because of some money-saving hospital debt hacks. She's also known for her scrapbooking and general momming. We love us some Shauna. By the way, she is hilarious and swears like a sailor and is really among one of the most badass advocates we have ever met.
We do bring up Shauna because it's not much different than the story we have for you today. Sure, there are a few differences, but at the end of the day, both were children when they were kidnapped and sexually abused. Both were under the spell of someone whom they had trusted. And all of them want you to know that they are way more than their quote-unquote victimhood. These survivors are moms, dads, family members, teachers, doctors, scientists, warehouse workers, race car drivers, TikTok sensations, podcasters, musicians, dancers, models, the list goes on. No matter what role that they may play in your mind, they want you to know that they are people just like you.
The same can be said for criminals. What's that old familiar adage where an average person could walk past 36 murderers in their lifetime? If you are in any public setting and take a look around you, you might be surprised to know that it is likely that at least one of those people you are nearby are either a criminal or a victim of a crime. We speak often about how a sex offender can look like your average or unassuming everyday person. The same can be said for survivors of crime. But the point we are trying to get at here is that nobody should be blaming themselves if they unknowingly place trust in the hands of somebody with ulterior motives. We are not mind readers, after all, and that survivors just want normalcy and to be treated normal. Most of them do not want special treatment. They just want justice and to be heard. And honestly, who can blame them? On the flip side, while we don't want to live in a bubble, as we always say, if you take people like Lori Daybell Vallow, Brian Kohberger, Colleen Ballinger, Ted Bundy, etc., people even say that John Wayne Gacy was a really nice guy. You would never know without the media that these people were harmful in any way. They're seemingly normal. Basically, on one hand, let's treat survivors of crime like they are not burdens, because they are not. On the other hand, it's probably a safe bet to vet everybody out.
Now, with things like murder or cults, sexual assault, kidnapping, fraud, any crime, we all like to think that it can never happen to us until it does. That's the other point that we'd like to make. This is one reason why empathy is important when it comes to reporting on or consuming true crime, because you never think any of this could happen to you until it does. We've all got to do a better job on filling the shoes of survivors and victims, if for a second, to truly try to understand what it's like to be in their shoes. The same goes for criminals. While we don't want to empathize with them, obviously we don't want to empathize with them, we do need to factor in the environmental, circumstantial, and familial factors that take place prior to the crimes that they commit. These are important if you truly want to understand what happens and why they do.
Please take a listen to the following dramatization and just know this could happen to anyone. This is a dramatization of a kidnapping in the city of Euless, Texas.
There was also an unnoticed penalty that prevented the New York Giants from winning in the playoffs. These incidents caused controversy, and many fans expressed discontentment in polls about the teams chosen for the upcoming college title game. A scandal swept over Baylor University, starting with murder. The actions of basketball coach Dave Bliss were revealed to be depraved, making this year's college sports misbehavior seem innocuous. Bliss attempted to derail the investigation into the killing of his own player, Patrick Dennehy, in order to protect his program. Carlton Dotson, Dennehy's former teammate, has pleaded not guilty to the murder and awaits trial in Waco, Texas.
In other breaking news today, a little girl that went missing last week was found safe. She was reunited with her family in Euless, Texas, but her mother notes a troubled expression on her daughter's face and within the community, with whispers of the involvement of the little girl's babysitter.
I'm so happy she's home, but I'm worried about her.
Police have a warrant to search the home of Sarah's babysitter, whose name is withheld from the media at this time. The warrant is being executed on suspicions of malicious intent towards a child and probable cause. More details to come as they are given to us during this ongoing investigation.
She's always been a happy child, full of wonder and just very artistic. She always sings, and that's what I love about her. She definitely hasn't come back the same little girl as she had gone missing. I'm so glad she's home.
The family will be spending time quietly reuniting after a tough week. Privacy has been requested at this time.
I just pray that nothing horrible happened to her, but my heart is just saying that something did, and that truly breaks my heart.
Well, Gwen, it's safe to say that at least the little girl is alive and well.
Yes, but how heartbreaking for her mother.
I agree.
But we can all agree that it's great news that she was found alive and reunited with her family.
Glad you're safe, Sarah. Now for the weather with Jeff.
Before we interview Sarah, we want to give a brief heads up that the recording may be a little difficult to hear in some parts. I worked diligently to clean it up, but unfortunately this is the best that it would do. We also want to remind you that this story can be triggering, as what happened to Sarah was traumatic and may be difficult to hear. As far as the audio though, not to worry, because we will go through and add some points of clarity, as we did have a tough time recovering the audio. Now this is Sarah. She introduces herself as Sarah Goad and presently Sarah Candler. She was born in New Hampshire and raised in Serena, Texas. She's big into edgier things and describes her aesthetic as things such as bubblegum pop, a little pink, knives, skulls, and other things like that. She said she's a mom first and that she's a protector and she will always be there for you. She has a distaste for people who chew loudly and jokingly says that if you've ever been in her presence and done that she's probably wanted to strangle you. She does also have a distaste for the smell of bleach, which has an awful lot to do with her story.
And that kind of deals with the issue that we're talking about. I have 3 amazing kids. I have a daughter who just turned 20 years old in March. I have a son who just graduated and will be 19 in a couple of weeks. And I have another amazing child who hasn't decided what they are. But right now is still him. And they will be 17 in August. So as far as the year, I'm not great on that. But if I'm 40, I was 5 years old at the time. I was born in 82, so I guess 88. But
she goes on to say that her abuser started taking advantage of her and her brother when she was just 5 years old, and the abuse lasted until she was 7, where he eventually kidnapped her and her brother from the apartment that they lived in Euless, Texas. She recalls that, other than the abuse, that he actually took really good care of them and spoiled them. I'm sure that looking back, she would see this as a red flag, but she was 5 years old at the time, so there's no way she would have known that she was being groomed.
He looked out for our needs, he spoiled us, and we did not, as young children, actually really understand that something bad was going on. I mean, we got along really well. I mean, I guess until we were picked up by CPS after he kidnapped us, because when he kidnapped us, he told us we were going on a trip. We didn't know we were good. Fortunately, it was only actually a couple of days. He took us to his mother's home in Jasper, Texas, and his mother actually realized that something was terribly off, and she called CPS. So we were not missing for very long at all. I think the bleaching of clothes was one of them, because I feel like it probably was to destroy evidence of sperm or body cells or anything. But also, I do remember knowing that what was going on wasn't right, and he had told me that he would have to kill my mom if I told anybody what was going on. And as a young child, I was just really scared of that, and I didn't, I was just like, oh God, I just got to protect my mom. So, obviously, and then he would also tell us, well, this is what people do when they love each other and they love you. So the only name I remember from him would be Phil. What I do remember about him physically, I remember he only had one eye, and he was in his late 50s. When he answered the ad for my mom, because in the 80s, you could just put up an ad for a babysitter, right? Looking for a good Christian person to take care of my kids. He answered the ad, and he filled all the blanks, and there was no background check back then. There was no way to really feel out people in a legal way. So she went based on her best shot. Well, my mom truly thought that this man was a good Christian man. And like I said, he did always take care of us. He spoiled us. He, other than the sexual abuse, there's only one other time I can think of where he neglected us. And that's when I burnt my foot, 3rd-degree burn. So he had fallen asleep in the chair, and he was cooking Brussels sprouts. Since he'd fallen asleep, I decided I was going to climb on top of it and go stir the Brussels sprouts, because he was spoiling them. We also had a fried abby on to cook french fries, and my little self stepped in the fried abby, put a polyester strap on, and got 3rd-degree burns at the first half of my leg. Fortunately, the polyester actually prevented much hitting and scarring. I have what looks like freckles on my leg now from the scarring. But that was the only time I can ever think of him being neglectful in our care, you know. And also hated Brussels sprouts for a very long time. Now I love them. I remember when it happened, I obviously call it spring. And he woke up and he put me in the bathtub and ran cold water over the knee sock that was on my leg that I was stuck in the fried Abby. And then, of course, I had to go to the hospital. So I guess that's probably actually my saving grace on not being severely disfigured on my leg, because I stepped in a hot oil of fried Abby. So yeah, that was the only time. There's only one other incident I can think of, and it wasn't even his fault. Like, he took us to a McDonald's because we were probably crying saying we wanted McDonald's. And some rowdy bandit kids came by and shot a water balloon at me and hit me in the leg from a speeding car. And then as I was lumping in, the door opened and hit my toe, and I ended up losing my toenail because the door jammed really fucking. Like, that wasn't actually his fault. Like, that wasn't anything he could control. And I know it sounds like I'm excusing him, and I'm not. Other than him sexually abusing us, and I guess emotionally abusing us by telling me, like, you know, I'm gonna kill your mom, he was good to us. He was very, very good to us. And that's the hardest part of it all. That's the hardest part of it all, is he was so good to us. He did take care of us. He did fulfill our needs. He did spoil us, but he also freaked us. I don't have any emotional memories of this. All the memories I have are intellectual, other than the one emotional memory of the beach. So, when I was 5 years old, my mom was working a few jobs. She was working overnight. She needed a babysitter for us. She put out a net, and we found what seemed like an amazing fit. It was an older man. He was a Christian man. And we fulfilled. In the 80s, you know, we didn't have access to background checks and stuff. You know, you just had to go with it. Shortly after he began babysitting us, he would babysit us a lot in his home. He began sexually abusing my brother and myself and my neighbor, another young girl about my age. He would not only penetrate us, but a lot of what I remember, he would have us stuck his member. He would tell me, oh, just suck it like a lollipop, it'll be okay. I know a lot of the time if he would go for my brother, I would talk to myself up and stuff, because I didn't want my brother to go through that. I mean, even at that young age, I did know it was wrong, but he would also tell us, this is what people do when they love each other, and I love you guys, you know. He was really, really good to us. He spoiled us. He took us places. He cared for us. There's, you know, I can only remember one negative other than the sexual abuse time with him. And that was because he fell asleep and I decided to be brave and walk on cabinets. By the time I was 7 years old, this had been going on for 2 years, he would always tell me, I can't tell anybody because it'll kill your mother or I'll kill your mother. And I knew it was wrong, but it didn't. Being a just past talker, I didn't register. All I knew was, well, I can't hurt my mom. And so I didn't tell anybody. And my little brother was only 3. He couldn't tell anybody. And the neighbor, I'm not sure why she didn't tell anybody. But I guess probably the same reason I did.
She goes on to say here that when she was 7 years old, he decided to up and take them away from the apartment in Euless, Texas without her mom's knowledge, and up and left to Jasper, Texas. Once her mother figured out that they were missing, she filed a missing persons report. Now, upon arrival to Jasper, his own mother started asking questions and figured out that something was horribly wrong. She then called Child Protective Services, scooped them up, and took them there. Sarah recalls almost fondly that in the time that they were there, she and her brother managed to get into some trouble. In her mind, everything was for fun. The black paint in the car, the assumption that they were going somewhere fun like a clubhouse, but indeed, the brain does do some crazy things to help protect a young and impressionable child during trauma. After all, she was with her brother. She likely felt safe because of that, and in her young mind, this was just her babysitter.
Once CBS got us, it took several years for him to actually be caught and indicted. His court case came about when I was about 10. I did not have to go to the trial. The attorneys actually took video testament from myself, my brother, and our friend. And he, after seeing the video testimonies, he immediately admitted everything. And probably gave him more information than we did. But as far as I know, he's behind bars. I do not know how long, because like I said, I was only 10 at the time. I don't know how long the time he got. I was always told, like, well, he's not going to last long in jail because they tend to take care of that in jail. So I will say the one emotional thing I have from this day, because I was so young, I don't have a lot of emotional from it, but the one emotional thing I have to this day is anytime I see an older or elderly man with one eye, I get a little scared. I get a little worried. I'm like, is that him? Is that him? Because I was so young. I don't remember what he looked like. And it's scary because these people, they fucking take advantage of our kids, and our kids don't tell us because they don't feel like they want the one. He wanted us to trust him. He wanted us to trust him. He wanted us to think that what he was doing was because he loved us. And yeah, you know, I do realize, like, and it is sickening, and it's one of the reasons I have advocated for my children. If anybody ever fucking says something untoward towards you, you come and tell me. I don't care what they say. I don't care if they say that they're going to kill you. You tell me. You let me know. If somebody lays a fucking finger on me that you don't approve of, you tell me. Because I don't care what they say. If they try to kill me, best believe me, they're not best to treat. I always say that I'm, in a way, thankful for what I went through, because it has allowed me to have a greater understanding on how to protect my children and other children. And I've also always said that, like, people ask me, they're like, how on earth have you lived through this and just not completely deteriorated? And I say, I can either choose to let my past define me and destroy me, or I can use it to grow and to learn and to be better. And that's what I choose to do. I don't choose to, I'm not saying I don't have traumas because of it, and I'm saying I don't have emotional bullshit because of it. No. I'm saying I'm not going to let me walk. I'm not going to be the victim. I'm not going to let what happened to me define who I am. I'm going to take what happened to me. I'm going to apply it to my life, and I'm going to use it to be better in other areas of my life. I think how it's affected me is I've been so much more wary about everybody I come in contact with. And especially as a mom, I'm so much more cautious about who my kids come in contact with. Emotionally, I think it actually elevated my promiscuity when I was younger. It, like, had me tap into things I wouldn't normally tap into and be comfortable with things. And I say comfortable on a loose term. Be okay with things I shouldn't have been okay with. As far as emotionally, personally for me, I guess that's the bleach thing. Like, that's the most visceral, emotional thing that I remember is, like, the smell of bleach now makes me want to vomit because we use so much bleach in our clothes, and I can only put that with that's the one thing that my brain still associates. But I think, honestly, it's made me so much more paranoid about anybody that my children have in contact with. Anybody and everybody. Because how am I supposed to know if that person that I think I can trust is actually going to be good for my kids or if they're going to hurt them? How am I supposed to know if that person that ticks all the boxes is not going to hurt my kids? Oh, I was just going to say, like, you want to be able to have a lot of people who want to have kids, but then you're scared to leave them with anybody because you don't know who you can trust. I mean, your closest family member could be a fucking undercover, under the closet pedophile and rapist. And I have too many friends and family that that's the case for. I got lucky that it was just my babysitter. It's scary. I'm not sure that he has any other victims. I was never told of any others, but I have no doubt in my mind that he probably does. My brother and I were immediately taken into foster care. So I went through a very long, difficult place in my life where I was shuffled through a lot of foster homes, and I don't think I've ever actually had anybody truly talk to me about this. Even my adopted family, we didn't talk about it. So I can't say that I actually do. I mean, my wife is very supportive. I mean, like I said, I don't have a lot of visceral memories.
Did y'all catch that? She had said essentially that she and her entire family tried to black this out, that they didn't really get that much support in the years following this incident. She does say that her wife has been very supportive, but otherwise, as far as friends and family, it either never got brought up or she hasn't really had a chance to speak up. This is one of the many reasons why we do what we do, because so many are either ignored or silenced into not telling their stories. We want to change that narrative. You might also remember or might have caught on by now that she said that she never realized that she would have so many emotions about this. A lot like Paris in episode 3 of this series, I just knew that something about this episode would break her down, and depending on how you see it, either unfortunately or fortunately, I was right. Now, I do believe that it's important to recognize that a trauma had occurred if you've gone through such trauma. I told Sarah that she was incredibly brave for telling her story and asked her if she felt like it would help others. She said that she knows it would help. And she also said that while she never thought of it that way, that she never felt brave herself. Like, she's just explaining what happened to her. That she does agree that it's brave when any survivor tells their story because it could potentially save others from going through what they have. And that we don't know how many people haven't come forward and the potential for them to get the help that they need. The more pressure being applied and the louder the voice is, the more likely to get these monsters off the streets.
And I do feel like it will help. The more that we continue to talk about these sex crimes that happened against us, the more comfortable other people are going to be in letting out their story. And then we can get these assholes off the ground. Honestly, at the time that I did not get to go to the trial, I don't actually know what his sentence was. I know he went to prison, but I don't know what his sentence was. I think that everybody should be hyper aware of their surroundings always be aware of, especially as parents, be aware of who your kids talk to and if there's any changes in their behavior. Be aware when your kid is super outgoing, like I was, and starts to become more recluse. Ask them questions, but don't ask them forcefully. Ask them in an open way that allows them to discuss. And then be cognizant of like bad words, like things you haven't heard your kids say before, terms they may not have known before, that somebody else may have taught them. Because those are all signs that somebody is feeding them information, somebody is warning them, and somebody is possibly trying to hurt them. And then inspect the people around you. Like, just be aware, be present. I would hope that more parents would have more awareness of the people that they're trusting their children to. And I would also hope that more parents would just listen to their kids. I know that my mom did the best that she could, but in her own way, she ignored a lot of the signs. I hope that we gain more awareness and more vigilance, because these people are out there. We've seen them in the priests, we've seen them in our neighbors, we've seen them in our babysitters. These people are out there, and unless you look for the little red flag, because it's little kids. And it's not just little kids, but in my situation, it's little kids. Just be aware and be more vigilant, and don't doubt your fucking kids when they say something wrong. I don't think I ever said anything was wrong with my mom, but I'm sure that there were things that I found her that should have been wrong.
We would like to thank Sarah for taking the time to speak with us and trusting us to give her a platform to speak. Sarah does a lot of cooking, singing, and does really cool nail designs. Her children and her wife are her life, and she is among one of the most hardworking and dedicated, beautiful souls that we have had the pleasure to know and talk to.
As of the day that I'm recording this, Sarah had a birthday a few days ago. So I want to wish her a happy birthday and just thank her so much for allowing us to tell her story, to allow her to tell her story. Thank you so much for trusting us. And Sarah, thank you for always being such an amazing and humble, wonderful, beautiful individual. I'm just so very thankful that we're friends. Sarah, like all survivors of these crimes, is a bee. Bees are strong, resilient, yet vulnerable. We must always protect the bees at all costs, for without bees, we as humans will not survive or thrive in life. So, be vigilant, for when you mess with the bees,
you get the hive.
Thank you for listening to A Nefarious Nightmare. Music used in the theme was originally by Ghost Stories Incorporated, remixed by Ryan RCX Murphy. Additional background music is provided by Epidemic Sound. A Nefarious Nightmare is scripted, researched, and produced by Courtney Fenner and Amanda Cronin. I'm Lainey Hobbs, and as always, be vigilant, for when you mess with the bees, you get the hive.